Welcome, everyone from around Massachusetts and the country. This event was featured on the AARP Virtual Community Center. My name is Teresa Choklos, and I am a volunteer with AARP Massachusetts Speakers Bureau. I am privileged to be able to travel around the state giving presentations on a variety of key topics and of interest to people age 50 and older. And I also get to do events like this now and again. Today is a second part of a three-part series where we will learn about hot water bath canning. These programs are recorded and made available on the AARP Massachusetts YouTube channel and via an email that will be sent after the event. For fun, please write in the chat where you're from and maybe why this topic is of interest to you. We know that your brain health is very important to you, and with this webinar, we encourage exploration, healthy eating, and possibly a new hobby. For lots of great resources about brain health, go to AARP's Brain Health Resource Center at aarp.org/brainhealth. AARP maintains a deep focus on the health, financial security, and personal fulfillment of people aged 50 and over and their families. And you'll find that reflected in our offerings and resources in our advocacy. Right now, in every state and all the way to the United States Capitol, AARP is advocating for the issues that affect you most. We're working to protect your hard-earned Medicare and Social Security benefits, and we're urging Congress to lower prescription drug prices, support family caregivers, and to stop scams and shut down fraud. AARP is making a big difference. We're taking on Big Pharma and winning. Medicare is now able to negotiate for lower prices on some prescription drugs, and insulin copays are capped at $35 a month. We're also opposing any proposed cuts to Social Security. You've worked hard for your retirement. It's your money, and you deserve to keep every cent of it. We'll keep working hard to protect your interests here in Massachusetts and across the country. You'll want to bookmark your local AARP state page for AARP Massachusetts. It's aarp.org/MA. And that's where we post about all our events, our wins, and our calls to action. You can find your local AARP news and information by going to aarp.org/local. This will help you stay informed. Today's presenters are Anna Mohammed and Dora Miller. Anna Mohammed currently serves as the Food Access Director for Northeast Organic Farming Association of Massachusetts, or NOFA. Anna completed NOFA Mass's Beginner Farmer Program in 2015 and began working with the organization in 2016. The programs that the Food Access Program covers are the Youth Agricultural Scientist Program at Home City Housing, the Open Pantry Community Garden Project, and smaller projects in the Boston and Springfield areas. Anna and her husband, Keith Mohammed, live in Springfield, Massachusetts, and they are market gardeners in the Mason area of Springfield. Dora Miller is a dedicated food access instructor at the Northeast Organic Farming Association of Massachusetts. With years of experience working with local farmers, community gardens, and libraries, she has been instrumental in educating youth and families on the benefits of growing and preserving their own food. Since 2017, Dora has honed her skills in canning, sharing her knowledge and passion with her community. During the pandemic in 2022, she went above and beyond by visiting her neighbors' homes, teaching families and their children how to make jam, fostering a sense of togetherness and self-sufficiency in challenging times. We were introduced to Anna and Dora by the Urban Farming Institute, an AARP Massachusetts community partner. The Urban Farming Institute, or UFI, is a nonprofit urban farm located in Mattapan, Massachusetts. Their primary focus is growing nutritious food for their community. As a regenerative farm, UFI refrains from using pesticides, herbicides, tilling, and other techniques employed by conventional agriculture. They're also known for their farmer training program and various programs focused on health promotion. They consider themselves lucky to support the healing of the land and those that grow on the land. As you think of questions you want to ask our speakers today, please place them in the Q&A section, and we will do our best to try to get to as many of them as possible before the hour is up. After today, within 3 business days, the recording will be sent to you. There will also be a brief survey that we hope you will take time to complete. Now, over to you, Anna and Dora.
Thank you, Teresa. Good afternoon, and thank you so much, Teresa and Cara and the whole AARP team. We're here today to talk about canning, dehydration, drying, and fermentation. So we know that when we go to our grocery stores, you know, the prices are a little higher than norm. So with this process, it's going to help you save money on your groceries, as well as if you have a farm or a garden, you can grow your own food, in that which you would know that they're free of chemicals. This is something I just have to add. This is something that we don't want to do at home right now. And this is not, it's very dangerous to try it right now. So I would suggest that we wait until we're more trained in knowing how to do this. We're gonna do a water bath canning, and we're gonna do salsa today. Also, this is something that our ancestors, our forefathers did, and it cuts the cost of food. Sister Anna, she's really, really good with sauces and pickling and salsa. Whereas we both do all of these things. I'm really good at the jams and the jellies. Okay. So today we're going to cover the products and the tools that you should purchase before you start this canning process. Okay, so there's many different tools that we have here. And I have a kit that I ordered from Amazon that I purchased. When I purchased this kit from Amazon, it was only $12 during COVID. We're also going to discuss botulism. We know that when we can foods, put it on our shelves for a year or two, we want to make sure that we don't have any botulism in it. Sister Anna will explain more on it, but I just want to say that once you can your jars, you would check for brown, moldy stuff around it to make sure that there's no botulism, which is bacteria in your food. Okay, so I'm going to start with the measuring spoons. We're going to need measuring spoons because we want everything to be measured precisely. Okay, I do have a sterile field here. It's like I boiled all of my stuff and I sterilized it and I put it on a sterilized cutting board. We want to make sure that we're using sterile items just so we won't contaminate our food. Now, if I was doing this in public, I would have gloves on. And since I'm not canning today, I'm not touching any food, I'm not processing any food, I don't have any gloves on. I'm just doing this for the sake of the presentation. So here's one of the tools that comes with the canning kit. This is a jar lifter. This helps to lift the jars out of the water, the hot water, once you're ready to can them. It comes with a small ladle. This is a small ladle to ladle the liquid into, or the product into your jars. So whatever product you have, you scoop it out with the ladle and you put it into your jars. This also came with the kit. This is a funnel. And this is the funnel to put on top of the jars, and then you put your product inside the jars. Then we have a jar tightener. This right here tightens the jars. Once you put this on your jars, this tightens your jars. Okay, this little piece right here. That doesn't come with the kit. This is a, oh my goodness. This is the cover that you put on top of the jars. The lid, this is the lid you put on top of the jars. Once the jars are filled with the product, you put this on top. It has some kind of paste right here, or glue right here, which will stick to your jars, so it'll seal your jars once the hot liquid is inside your jars. And these right here, I normally sterilize them inside of a pan, and I take the hot water from my boiling jars that are being sterilized. I pour the hot water in here so they can sit and sterilize inside the pot. I'm gonna grab a jar that I have boiling over here. I'm gonna grab this out. And there we go. So I have that. I'm gonna pour the liquid out. These jars has already been boiling for a while. Once I get this out of the water, I'm not gonna put it on anything metal or a flat surface with nothing covering it. So normally I would have a towel, but today I'm gonna use a paper towel. So once you take your hot jars out of the water bath canner, you wanna put it on something like a cloth or a towel, just something to break the barrier from hot to cold. So I'm putting this here. And then that's when you start filling your jars. But before that, this is hot. Your jars needs to be tested before you do anything. You test your jars for cracks, for any nicks or anything in your jars. And if you have any nicks in your jars or cracks in your jars, then it's best that you don't use them. So what I normally do is I take my finger and I rub it across the top of the jar. And if I feel any nicks or anything, if I feel that, then I won't use it because there's something wrong. There's a crack in it or a nick in it, you know. And I also look at some jars on the side of the jars, they have a line. This particular ball jar doesn't have it, but some jars have like a little, oh, this one does have it. It's a little line on the side. I just touch that line to make sure there's no nicks in it or anything like that before I use it. Also, we have the lid lifter. This little piece of tool right here, I love it so much. This right here will help you take the hot lids out of your hot water, if there was water in here, and you lift it up like this, and then you place it on top of your jars. Okay, and then that's when you put your band your band on top of your jar. And then you would use your tightener because everything's hot. Everything's hot. First, you'll turn it a little bit. Fingertip tight, which is just a little bit. And then you'll just take this and just give it a little twist, just so you won't tighten it real tight. Because some people's finger, Sister Anna can tell you, some people's fingertip tight are tighter than others. So this helps me to make sure that I don't tighten the jar too much. What else can I go over? Well, I did write something down here. I wrote this product, by doing it this way, it helps us with self-determination over our food choices. So when we're doing this whole canning process, sterilization, preservation, drying, fermentation, when we're doing this, it helps with food costs, and it also helps with self-determination over our own food choices. And when we cook our own food, we know that there's no chemicals in it. So I'd rather make my own sauces, my own salsa, my own jams, put it on my shelf, keep it on the shelf for a long time, sometimes a year, sometimes 18 months, sometimes 2 years, depending on what it is. So with that being said, I'm going to, if I missed anything, my sister Anna will let me know. I'm going to turn it over to Sister Anna. Like I said earlier, Sister Anna is, she specializes, she's been doing this so much longer than me, but she specializes in sauces, pickling, salsa, the works. So without any ado, Sister Anna, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you let me know if I missed anything, okay?
It's all good, sis. Thank you. I think you covered it all. And one of the things that we definitely want to bring home, that this is a good way of creating resiliency, but also taking care of your health. A lot of the canned goods that we do buy in the stores, they're preserved, they're meant for extension of shelf life, but they do have a lot of preservatives in them to keep them on the shelf for a very long time. What basically this is more of a natural way. What you have is what you've either grown, gotten from a farmer's market, or a supermarket, and so you're controlling what you put in your food, how long it stays. The other part too that I appreciate about canning are the meals that I could create, my own meals. It has saved me time and has saved me money. Most importantly, it's extended my harvest and it cuts down on food waste. So those are some of the other benefits of canning. So I'm actually going to go into the recipe and you'll get a chance to see all the different tools that Sister Doris showed you in action. So we'll go over, this is a very easy recipe. When we do this with the youth at Home City Housing, this is one of their favorite activities towards the fall. They get a chance to see all of the vegetables that we've been growing, how they can be put to use. And you'll get an opportunity to see how we use the tools. And also we're going to delve deeper into different safety tips. We want you to be safe when you do this, and you can very easily do this and do it safely. She did mention the whole word of botulism and what that is. That actually is a spore, a bacteria that we don't want that can get into your canned goods when there is space for oxygen to get in. You'll see how we relieve the oxygen out of the jar. And when that oxygen gets in and just sits on your shelf because it's not in the refrigerator, that's where you begin to see that very drastic discoloring. And you might see things turn black or brown. If you see that, you want to discard that jar immediately. Don't even open it. Get rid of it, wrap it in a bag of some sort that no animals can get in, and then you throw it out into your garbage can outside. But if you follow the steps, take your time. Don't feel like you have to rush through this. One of the key differences is not like cooking. So you want to follow your steps. You want to take your time. You definitely don't want to try and multitask when you do this, and you'll have success. The one thing we'll talk about as we wrap up towards the end, the importance of rotating your stock, the importance of dating and moving things around and spot checking each batch. I'm always spot checking each batch that I do. So without any further delay, we'll go ahead and get started with the recipe. And I saw that some people had a plethora of tomatoes. They talked about all the tomatoes they had. And with this particular recipe, it is one way for you to take care of all those tomatoes and not let them go to waste. So the recipe itself starts out with 10 cups of chopped and cored tomatoes. I'm using half of this recipe because I'm just doing a few jars for today. Hopefully you can see this, but these are all of the tomatoes that I chopped up. I also have different color tomatoes. And the other thing I wanted to emphasize too, because I am just doing this for my home, my hands I've washed a couple of times. Normally, if I was doing this for sale or to give away, I would have gloves. If I was doing it in the public, I would also have gloves on. But since I'm in my home and we're the only ones that will consume this, I just keep my hands washed. So I've placed my tomatoes in the pot. I'm now adding 1 chopped or diced sweet pepper and 2 diced Hungarian waxed and 1 serrano chili. You can use different peppers. You can use for this recipe your sweet pepper, your ají dulce for those who might know what that is. You can use poblano pepper. You can use habanero, Scotch bonnet. Just watch that heat a little bit. But you can use a mixture of different hot peppers along with your sweet peppers. Your sweet peppers, you can use the regular green, cubinal, your Italian red sweet pepper. So you can use any combination of those. Our next 2 ingredients, I'll add them at the same time, is 2 cloves of diced garlic and a half of a white onion. You can also use red in place of that. So I'll place that in. Diced cilantro. And I'm using just half of the recipe on this. This called for 2 tablespoons. I'm actually just adding 1. The one thing I can say about the recipes we do use them out of the Ball cookbook, which is important to follow because it has all of the certified kitchen recipes that they have used and tested over time. So it's good to use your recipes out of that book, especially if you're a new canner. The USDA also has a canning guide that's very simple to follow, very easy, has wonderful recipes. And so either book will be very good. Some recipes will allow you to substitute. I'm going to show you a substitution here, just based on the process you're using. So for this recipe, it calls for salt. Now, I can either use sea salt, kosher salt, or in most cases, you're using what's called canning or pickling salt. This salt is used mostly for your pickling. So if you're doing pickled cucumbers, pickled zucchini, and so forth, this is always the one you're going to use. But in a recipe for salsa, I could interchange. I can use the pickling salt, I can use regular sea salt, or I can use kosher salt. The Ball book gave me the equivalent measurements to use. So whereas I would be using 1 tablespoon of the pickling salt, I'm going to use 2 tablespoons per the recipe as a substitute of the sea salt. Now, the salt and the vinegar works together with the heat and the steam to create the process of preserving. So the acid from the vinegar and the tomatoes, because tomatoes are acid based, will actually help create that environment where the bacteria won't stay. The heat and the steam from the pot will continue to kill it off, and that's what allows it to sit on your shelf. Because this is a high acid food, we can use the hot water bath. If I was just doing, say, tomatoes, regular like stewed tomatoes, and I didn't put any kind of acid in it, or if I was doing string beans without any vinegar, I would use a different process, which is called the pressure canner, because we need more steam, more pressure to help kill off the bacteria that could cause botulism. So now that I've added my salt, I'm going to add 1 cup of apple cider vinegar. And as you can tell, this is the acid maker. And this will work with the tomatoes. All right, so we have all of our ingredients in our pot. I am going to now place this on the stove to start simmering and cooking. Give it a quick mix. And hopefully you all can see this. I'm going to mix this really quickly to incorporate everything. We'll just let this begin to cook and simmer. Now, what I love about this particular recipe, because it takes the same time for the salsa to cook as it does for the jars and the lids to sterilize, I could do everything at the same time, which makes it very, very quick to do. So I'm going to make a little space here in my work area. Another conversation or another item for safety, you want to keep your area as clear as possible. You don't want a lot of unnecessary things if you can help it. So I'm going to move some things out of the way. And this is what I mean by taking your time. You don't want to rush through this. So I made space here in my work area. Okay. Some other pieces that you want to include while you're canning, you definitely want several towels, and I'll show you how these towels are going to be used. Paper towels so that you can wipe around the lid or around the lip of the jar before you put the lid on. And then, of course, you want the all-purpose, all necessary pot holders. And pot holders are very important so that you're not burning your hands. So now that I have my jars sitting on a rack, one thing I want to point out as you're sterilizing, and I'm going to pick up the phone here so you can see this vantage point in my pot. Hopefully you could see it here. Okay, so I'm going to lower this rack. You never put your jars right on the bottom of your pot because it could cause them to break. You always want to set them on a rack and lower the rack into the pot. And that's what I'm going to do now at this point. Just have 4 jars in here, so I'm going to lower them in. And I have them submerged. Your jars should at least have 1 inch to 2 inches of water covering them when you submerge them in your pot of water. And that way the boiling hot water covers all of the jar, particularly the lid. The lid itself has that adhesive around the edge of it. Sister Dora showed you that. We need it to sit completely in hot water so this edge begins to melt and stick to the top of the jar. So it goes on like this with the ring securing it. That's what we want. That's why you want at least your jar to sit in at least 1 to 2 inches of water. So now that our salsa is beginning to cook, and you want to keep stirring it so it doesn't stick. And you can keep this on somewhat of a high heat. And once you see your salsa begin to bubble, turn it down on low. And then time it for 10 minutes. Okay. While that is cooking, I'm going to now take my lid, my lids and my rings, and I'm going to put them in a separate pot of hot water by themselves so that they can also begin to sterilize and we can get them ready for the process of filling jars. So I'll place these in now. Continue to stir my salsa. And we're not cooking the salsa all the way. When the food is placed in the jar, once we get the full jar into the pot, it'll continue to cook and complete its cooking process. We just need to soften it just a little. And you'll see it thicken over time. And this will heat up very quickly. So once that starts, then we'll start our timer. Another safety trick I want to point out to you, we're dealing with very hot things, as you can see. So whenever I lift the lid off, and I'm going to lift it now because I haven't started timing, you never want to just take a top right off your pot with a lot of steam. That's going to cause a possible steam burn. I've had that, it's not fun. But you want to practice what we tell the youth to do in our canning classes, which is the Captain America method, where you use the top of your pot as a shield and then take it off gently. I'll show you that again, but you never want to just pull the top of the pot off quickly off of a heavy boiling pot of water, because that steam comes up very quickly and could injure you. So at this point, now that things are cooking pretty quickly and my salsa is starting to thicken, I'm going to go ahead and start timing. And we're going to time for 10 minutes. The 10 minutes is for both the pot of salsa and for the sterilization of my jars, lids, and rings. So I'm going to go ahead and start that timer now. And as the timer is going, I will continue to stir my salsa so that it does not stick. And I'm not stirring hard. I'm just stirring enough so that it does not stick to the bottom. My lids and rings are sterilizing. They're in a very hot pot of water by itself. And I can hear the boiling of the water in the pot with the glass jars. Once that comes out, once that ends, I'll lift the rack, pull out my jars, and we'll start to fill it. Now, while we're waiting, I wanted to show you some possible, what the product will look like. This is a jar that I did last month, actually, my first batch of salsa, and I've labeled it. Another jar that I found in my inventory, this is a slightly different type of salsa. I actually did this in 2022. It was hiding from me when I was rotating stock. It's always good to label your products that you create so that you know when you did it. And as you are moving things around, the goal with rotating your stock is you bring things that are older to the front, eat that first, and then the things that are newer put in the back. I think in the inventory world, it's last in, first out, and then your more recent stuff goes in the back. So when you're dealing with your inventory, always label your jars and put your newer stuff in the back, bring your older stuff to the front. I do advise you to use it, and that's how you know if your technique is good and if your seal is good as well. Okay, we're getting there.
And if someone is asking if you're able to show your stove top, so they could, I guess, so they can see what's going on with the pot.
Sure. I'm gonna move my phone. Okay, so that's what's in the pot now. This is the salsa. It's starting to bubble. And in this pot, this is where the jars are. And back here, this is where the lids and rings are. Everything is going at the same time. So the goal would be that at the end of 10 minutes, the salsa's ready, the jars are ready, and the lids and rings are ready, and we'll be able to actually fill our jars. So hopefully that helps. And we have only 7 minutes left, so this will be going pretty quickly.
Did you want to take a few questions while we're waiting for the 7 minutes?
Sure, you can.
Yes.
Okay.
In 7 minutes, go pretty quick.
Well, the first question was, can the jars be reused?
Yes, as long as those jars are in good condition, as Sister Dora mentioned, as long as there are no nicks or cuts or breaks in it, yes, you can use the jars, which saves you money in the long run.
And then how do you sterilize the big cutting board?
Sister
Well,
Dora, you want to answer how you did that?
Well, people use different cutting boards. I use a glass cutting board. So I just use hot soap and water. And sometimes I'll use a little bit of alcohol, just a little bit, and then let it dry out. Yeah, that's with my glass cutting board, my favorite cutting board.
And can tools be sterilized in the dishwasher? And what about the jars and lids?
I don't have a dishwasher. I do know people who have done that. They put it on the hot cycle. Um, I guess if I had a dishwasher, I could try that, but I have heard of people using their dishwasher. Sister Dora, I don't know if you've heard the same thing.
I have a dishwasher. I have put my tools inside the dishwasher. However, I like to hand wash everything. I don't really use my dishwasher too much, but I have done it, when I was like rushing out the house to do something. Yeah, I see there's a question about the lids. Why should we not tighten the lids too much? Because the lids can buckle. When you don't tighten your lids, when you tighten them too tight, it won't allow air to seep in. So if the air won't get in, then the lids won't seal. You won't get a proper seal. So you got to have a little air to get in the jar so the lids can seal. Buckled lids can also can cause can cause unsafe food. So you got to make sure don't tighten it too much because you need to have it sealed. So and in order for it to seal, a little bit of air has to get in so it can form a suction. And you don't want your lids to buckle and not seal properly. So that's why we don't tighten it too much.
Another question is, can you use Himalayan sea salt, like I guess instead of the salt that you have there?
It depends on your recipe. With the ball book, some of the recipes will allow you to make substitutions. They will give you the equivalent. So I did use Himalayan sea salt for this recipe. The equivalent was for 2 tablespoons versus the 1 tablespoon of pickling salt. So you just want to read your recipe and see if there are substitutions. There are some recipes in the ball book or USDA where you can make changes like that. You can even make additions and changes to different spices. So really follow the recipe. Unlike cooking where you can kind of just do a pinch of this and a little something, something of that, you definitely want to follow. And if it says 1/2 of a teaspoon, go ahead and do that because that is going to affect the taste over time and maybe the preservation process as well.
Yeah,
That was a
and
good
also
question.
I use Sister Anna mentioned that we use the Ball book of canning. I have a lot of canning books. So another book that we use, I don't have the other book with me right now. It's upstairs. However, I do have this is one of the books that I use. This is the book that I was taught on. This book right here. So I was taught by using this book right here, if you guys can see it. Um, and then after I got more advanced, I went to the Ball Blue book of canning. And like I said, there's so many books out there, but the one that we always use is the Ball Blue book of canning. And the reason why I use that one, because the recipes are more clearer. There it goes, right there. That's right. That one right there.
Mhm.
It's and this one, you go step through step by step by step. But that one, it was just so much easier for me. So yeah. Any more questions, hon?
They have to do with the tomatoes. Do you have to peel the tomatoes or do you have to remove the seeds?
Oh, that's an excellent question. Again, that goes back to the recipe. The recipe that I'm using just required that it was cored. Um, um, taking the middle taken out of it. That was it. I do have another salsa recipe that will say peel it, core it, take the seeds out. But the one that I'm using today does not require that, just that take the core out of the center. So that definitely is a good question. Again, it goes back to the recipe. There's maybe 5 or 6 different types of salsa that I make, and they have some different processes each time.
And the next
Anna.
one says, how long are the jars and lids sterilized for?
Wow. Well, it's 10 minutes each time. So when the 10 minutes is over for both the salsa and the jars, everything will come off and I'll be ready to use it.
Okay. And it says, do you use the flat part of the lids only once?
Yes, the lids you use once. Once you break the seal, once you open the lid with, say, a can opener or something like that, once that seal is broken, you cannot use it again. The jar you can use again, and the rings you can use a few more times as long as it's not rusted. You can use those again, but the lid, once you remove the lid, it's done. You have to throw that away.
Okay.
Unless
And
you wanna use it for something that's not, you can use it for something like put marbles in a jar or something and just seal it, or you just wanna use it for something else. But
right.
I wouldn't, some people reuse their lids, but I wouldn't recommend that. I rather play it safe because I'm gonna put it on my shelf, I'm gonna feed my family. So I just try and be as safe as I can possibly be.
And do you use the flat part of the lids only once?
Yeah, like I said, and Sister Anna mentioned, yeah, you use it only once, but you can use it for other things. You can take this jar and you can put other things in it, it doesn't have to be food. You can use it for just other things, but I just wouldn't use it again for canning food. I wouldn't do it.
Um, is the hot water only around the outside of the jar?
Is the hot water, can you repeat that, please?
Is the hot water only around the outside of the jar?
Well, once you take the jar out of the hot water and you pour the water off, the jar is hot. So, is that what they're saying?
Um, I don't know. I assume I thought I don't know if it had to do with when you were putting the jars like on the rack or something.
Okay,
And I actually just pulled the jars out of the hot water because they're sterilized now. There's water in the jar, of course, because it's been submerged in a pot of water, but I'll pour that water out and start filling. So I don't know if that'll help in the response in the answering that question.
was that question answered? Is that the answer they were looking for?
Some of these questions were asked at the beginning, so someone's saying, I think it means is the water over the whole jar?
Yes.
So if they
Yes,
want to
it's
know if the
submerged.
water is inside the jars.
No, it's not inside, it's submerged. The jar is filled and submerged completely into the pot of water.
Yeah, because this is, can you see that? Can you see any jars inside there? So the jars are submerged. And I would say, about how many inches? I would say about 3 inches underneath the water on the top of
Yeah,
the
it's
jar.
about, you want to cover your jars at least 1 to 2 inch. 2
Okay.
inches is good. Two
Yeah.
inches is very
But
good.
when I'm
Mhm.
boiling, yeah. Yeah.
Um, they're asking, can you freeze salsa?
I have frozen it, yes. But then at that point, I'm not cooking it. I just make it like I normally would. And then I'll freeze it. I'll put it in my freezer. I don't need to do this part if I'm going to freeze it. Just know that, it's taking up space in your freezer. It's not going to last as long as it would if you do it this way, but you can freeze it.
And then they're asking, are you heating the rings and the lids?
Yes, we are. We're doing both because you want both sterilized.
And the temperature to heat the jars, like what is the temperature?
With hot water bath can, it's going to be 212 degrees.
And then do you drain the tomatoes?
No, you don't have to.
Okay, and let me just see one more.
Now, there's another tool that I use that I love. It keeps me from doing myself in. If you notice, the jar is going to be hot when it comes out of the hot pot of water. And the rule of thumb is you want hot food in a hot jar. Because if I put hot food in a very cold jar, the jar is going to shatter. Well, to keep me from touching with my bare hands a very hot jar, either I can use a towel to wrap around it so I can move it around, or I have what's called a jar cuff that my hands fit in like a baseball mitt. Anybody who's ever played baseball, softball, you'll know how this feels. And I could just wrap it around the cup and move it around. And this is one of my favorite tools. It actually allows me to stabilize the jar while I fill it. Now, the other tool that Sister Dora showed you earlier, and we're using it in action, is the funnel, the food funnel. Now, of course, I could probably fill this jar without the funnel, but the funnel keeps me, A, from making a mess, and number two, from burning myself, because I have hot food now, and I don't want to injure myself. So by using this funnel, I make less of a mess, and I don't have the risk of possibly burning myself as much. The second tool that you're going to see in action, she showed you, I like to call it the 2-for-1 tool because it does two things for you. If you can see here, it has steps, gradated steps, and it has it in measurements: 1 inch, 3/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch. You'll feel it is raised. This is the measure, what's called head space on the jar. Your head space is this part of the jar where the food is the stop when you're filling. Each recipe has a different headspace measurement. For this recipe, we want the 1/2 inch. So it would be this third step where my finger is, right where my finger is, and hopefully you can see it. I will hook this step onto the side. And if this part is touching, that means I've gotten it correctly. Okay, so I'm off by a little. And I'm just going to add just a little to get up to that 1/2 inch. So I'll grab my funnel. Now I have a towel. I always use towels. I only have towels just for canning, and I wash them every time in hot water. And I wrap them in plastic to make sure that no dirt or anything gets out or gets on them. So some people may use a cutting board. I like to use towels. All right, we have it. There's the 1/2 inch. That's what it looks like. Now that I have the 1/2 inch, I'm going to take all the bubbles out. So this end, this nice rounded end, is the bubble remover. And this is how we make sure we don't have oxygen bubbles that can cause our food to spoil and let botulism get in. So what I'm doing now is I'm just taking this tool, I'm pushing the food or the salsa inward to release the bubbles. You'll start to see the bubbles float to the top and burst. That's what we want. That means all the oxygen within the food or within the salsa is being removed. Now that I've done that, I'm going to wipe around the top of the jar where the lid will sit. We don't want any dirt or any excess food to corrupt or nullify our seal with the lid. So you always want to clean off the top of your jar before you place your lid on it. Some people may dip their paper towel in vinegar. That's one way to do it. But if you give it a good wipe, that will help. Now this next step, Again, this is Sister Dora's favorite tool. It is the lid lifter. And I'm going to bring this closer so you can see how it works. In this pot are my lids, oops, and my rings. This water is hot, so of course I don't want to stick my hands in it. So I'm going to take my lid lifter, pick up a lid, place it on my jar, and I'm going to use a spatula so I don't have to touch it to stabilize it. And now I'm going to take out my ring, put it on, use my tightener, and I might start it with my fingers and do it real quick. I'm going to hold on to my jar with my cuff and tighten. And it wasn't a big tightening. Fingertip tight this way too with glass. Remember, glass is going into hot water. It will expand and contract. If it's too tight in that expansion and contraction period in the pot, it could actually cause the glass to shatter too. So that's the other reason why you don't want to make it so tight. Now our jar is ready to go into the pot of water to begin the sealing process. Now, this is another safety tip that I'm showing you. I have small hands and I don't want to risk just using the jar lifter just in case I lose my grip. So I always put a mitt with a towel. I use the jar lifter and I support it and bring it back to my pot. So if I just so happen to lose my grip on the lifter, I've supported it with my other hand that's protected. I come back to my pot and lower it right into the pot on the rack. I'm going to bring over another jar and do the same thing. Now, because of today's time, I'm just going to do these two and get them in the pot for you. And then we can answer any additional questions. Once you do this a couple of times, you actually get used to it. You know by instinct where that headspace is, but it's always good to measure every time. And Teresa, if you see any other questions, we could take them.
So they want to know, what is the name of that top of jar measurement tool you have, and where is a good place to purchase it?
Sure, great question. So it's the headspace tool, headspace measurement tool. It also has the bubble remover at the bottom, but the best way to remember it is the headspace measuring tool. Most of your tools you can get at either Walmart. You could order it from Amazon. You could go to a True Value store. Here in Springfield, it's known as Rockies. I don't know if you all have True Value where you're calling from. A lot of your hardware stores do carry canning supplies. Tractor Supply is another one that's very good. And if you buy a kit, my kit at the time was $10. Right now they're running $19.95 if you buy a ball canning kit, and that kit will have the jar lifter, it'll have the lid lifter and the headspace measurement tool. If you go, there are some other companies that have bigger kits that might run you $25, $30. You'll see them on Amazon.
In the wintertime, the prices go up because a lot of people are canning, they're harvesting and they're canning. Sister Anna, where did you purchase that that mitt from? Did you purchase that mitt from Ball, or did you purchase it from Amazon, or?
Actually, I got that directly from Amazon. It was actually an item they were discontinuing, ironically, but you can't, I have seen it on the Ball website. And the reason why we keep mentioning Ball and its partner company Kerr is because their recipes and tools they've tested in their own kitchen. and
Yeah.
they can guarantee those recipes. They can guarantee those tools. And so when, as a new canner, it's good to use tools that you're familiar with, tools that have a good track record. So that's why you keep hearing us mention Ball, maybe Kerr. Not that we are Ball representatives, but that we know that the tools have been tried in their kitchens and they are guaranteed by them.
And there's also, I don't have it with me, but there's also, I used it for the last class, but for the funnel, there's a funnel that has the measurements on it. If you don't have a headspace or the measuring, if you don't have this tool right here, there's a funnel that has all the measurements on it, and all you do is put it on top of the jar, and it'll tell you what the headspace is. So you won't have to use this. It'll just be easier for you to just use that funnel, and it'll read the headspace for you. And you can, I got that from Amazon, but Progressive, I think it's Progressive. Yeah, Progressive
Mhm.
makes it.
Progressive is good.
Yes. And it's red and white.
So someone was asking about, I'm trying to find the question. People, just so you know, people are commenting, thank you so much. It's a great class. But someone's asking, what if you don't make it to the headspace on the last jar? Can you still process it, or do you just not can that one?
That's the one you put in the refrigerator. That's the sample. Because if you don't have the headspace, if you don't have enough for the headspace, then you have air that could get in. So if you find that you get to that last jar and instead of being able to measure a half inch, maybe you've got 2 inches open, that's the one that you want to eat. That's the one you want to put in the refrigerator and go ahead and eat, because oxygen can get into that one if you try and actually can it. And I say that because when I first started canning, I tried that. And yeah, I had an experiment on my hands. So go ahead, and if you have one that comes up short, just that's the sample for the house is what I call it.
And when the jars are filled up and go back into the pot,
Mhm.
are they still fully submerged?
Yes, they have to be. They have to be, because that the water and the steam creates kind of a pressure even in this process. So in order to achieve that, the jar has to be submerged completely in water. And that hot water helps the glue on the lid to melt. So without it being submerged, that lid will have a harder time to melt.
And does the time back in water after filling the jars change based on the size of the jar?
Yes, and the recipe as well. So when you're looking at your recipe, please look at the last part where it says processing. It will tell you how long it should stay in that hot water. This recipe says 15 minutes. If I was using a quart, it might be 20 minutes, and it's actually 20 minutes if I did use a quart. If I'm using a half pint, it may be a little shorter, but always go by the recipe. The recipe will tell you how long you're going to have it in the pot once you get everything, once you begin that processing. You never want to shorten. You can go a little longer, but you don't want to shorten that process, because that's what ensures the seal. All right. So all my jars are in. I'm going to lower my rack in. And I'll show you. So they're pretty well covered. It's about 1.5 inches, almost 2. I'm going to place my top. And I'll start timing for 15 minutes.
And just an FYI, if you don't have a base for the bottom of your canner, you can take a whole bunch of these and place them in the bottom of your pot. Just make a whole barrier. Just put them in the bottom of the pot and put the jars in on top of these. So that's called compromising. So sometimes you may not have a basket, or you may not have the little disc that goes in the bottom of the pot. You can use these. Just make one out of this. Can you see it? These the lids. You just make your own barrier in the bottom of the pot.
Mhm. All right.
So
So your finished product is going to look like this. That is a finished jar, one that I just did.
And you put a label on it for today's date, right?
Yes, I
Well,
did.
not that one.
Yeah, not this one. This one, I'm canning. I started canning end of July as soon as the tomatoes were coming in. But on this, I have what it is and the date that I processed it. And that way, as I'm using my stock throughout the season, throughout the year, I know which one to use first. This will go behind anything that was 2023, or maybe I did some things in May or February. So this will go behind that. I'll eat that first, and then this will come to the front as the older ones are being consumed.
So we're almost out of time. There's a question about, should they be stored out of sunlight?
Yes, you want it in a place that is cool, dark. You don't want it in direct sunlight. You could put it in your closet even. My mom would do that when she would do tomato sauce. You could put it in your closet, under your bed. My husband constructed an area for us to keep our canned supplies, partly because we eat, we rotate it so much. But you do want it someplace that's dark, that's cool, and it's not direct sunlight will hit it. It's not that it can't sit out, a day or two, but you don't want it prolonged.
Is everyone able to see Dora on their screen at this point? They're asking that she show the demonstration of that alternative with the two lids to use when you're putting the jars back in the water.
Sure, I think I can do it. I have my pot here. So I have two rings here. And in a perfect world, if you don't have the rack like you saw in mine, you could stack these like this, maybe stack 8 of them and set the pot right on top in the pot, set the jars right in the pot on top of the rings. And it will look like, let's see if I can get it closer, similar to that. Mhm. Or a better view could be like this.
Yeah, and Dora's also showing on her countertop what it might look like. Okay.
As long as
Well,
it fills the bottom of your your pan. Can you see in the bottom of this? I have a rack, and then I have this little disc.
yes.
That little disc, I think I paid $3 for that. I have 2 of them. I just use the rack and the disc. You don't have to use both of them. I just do. But if you don't have a rack or a disc, you can use those bands.
Well, thank you, girl. Thank you, ladies, so much. I want to thank everybody who's joined us from all the way across Massachusetts to New Jersey, Texas, the Bronx in New York, Ohio, Louisiana, Illinois, Maryland, Georgia, Washington State, the Panhandle of Florida, California, Oregon, Utah, Kansas. If I didn't mention your state, you might not have added it in the beginning. I see somebody's from Arizona. We really appreciate all of you from all across the country, east to west, joining us today, and that so many of you have put great comments of how much you love today's presentation. There will be one more in this series next month, so make sure to tell your friends and register so that you'll get the links. And once you register, you will also get the recording and the recipe and everything else. Thank you both so much.
Can I
I
say one
can't
more
even
thing?
read all the comments, the great comments that are coming in, because what people aren't understanding, you're all sending it at the same time and it's just flashing across the screen. But I'm
Can I say
saying
one more
thank you,
thing?
wonderful, great job. You guys were excellent. It's all good. So
Can I say one more thing before you hang
sure.
up? You can also store your jars inside one of these. These are I paid $10 for these during the pandemic. You can store your jars in these instead of stacking them up on top of each other. You can get these from Walmart for $20. This is one set, but they cost $20 each. Just want to share that.
Okay.
Oh, I forgot.
Thank you both so much, and thank you,
Thank you
everybody.
for
Have a
having me.
wonderful
Thank you.
rest of the day and a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you
you. Have a
all.
great weekend, everyone.
Bye.